like the
Alright, so this is a ridiculous build that sources most of its damage from a ridiculously bugged item, but it also has some cool interactions and synergy pieces that I thought might be worth explaining. I wanted to wait until the post-DLC hotfix rolled out to see if this would get addressed, but since it wasn't fixed, you should be able to do some shenanigans with this for a bit. So the bugged item is Heatwave, and right now both the damage per second value and the duration are being affected by status duration increases. So what that means is the total damage of the Heatwave burn benefits from status duration squared. And of course we're going to abuse that with my favorite item, Energized Neck Coil. So with both Affliction and Timekeeper's Jewel giving us 4 times status duration, we're actually getting 16 times damage on the neck coil explosions. And they'll deal almost 4,000 damage. So just stand here. Almost 4,000 damage. So the other half of this build is the defensive side, which is allowing us to stand next to bosses and eat their attacks until they die. So this comes from a couple of different sources, and they all work together in some pretty satisfying ways. Let's start with the archetypes. So Death Wish is the star of the show here, and not only for the massive damage boost and the lifesteal, but because it damages us. And this damage activates Hardcore Metal Band for 5 Bulwark stacks, as well as the Awakening perk on Wrathbringer for 50% more melee damage, which I'll get into in a second. We're using Invoker as the primary archetype, so we can have Death Wish permanently active. And while you can't truly loop skills infinitely with these stats, bosses are going to die like long before you start running dry on skills, and more importantly, Death Wish charges. So next, let's talk about Lifesteal. Lifesteal only works on base damage, but this build has two sources of extremely high base damage. So the first is Energized Neck Coil, which uses the total status damage to produce the base damage of the explosion, and this is like one of the highest sources of base damage in the game because of that. And with the explosions hitting for almost 4,000 damage, you'll heal to full every 5 seconds. And second is Way of Kaeula. So 1305 base shock damage is quite a bit of damage, and with Death Wish plus Profane Heart giving 13% lifesteal, every single lightning strike is also going to heal you back to full health. So finally, let's talk about this shield nonsense. So in the DLC patch, Ring of Spears was buffed to incorporate melee damage, but it's currently also activating the melee mutator Shielded Strike, and this works on hits with the orbiting spears as well as the ones thrown by reactivating the mod. So basically we get infinite shields by standing next to enemies and letting the blades hit them. Something interesting to note is that these spears also benefit from the 50% damage increase from Awakening. So, like, the damage of Ring of Spears isn't important at all, but it's a pretty cool synergy, and I thought it was worth mentioning. So, for the rest of the items, we're using Leaking Gemstone to recharge Heatwave and Ring of Spears while they're active. And we're also using the Chakra perk. Yeah, the Chakra perk to extend their duration even longer, so basically we can just kind of pop these and stand there. The last ring slot is really whatever you want. You can use Zoe's ring to extend the duration of the mods even longer. You could use like Burden of the Follower, which will guarantee that you always have your mods up when they expire. You could also use like Dead King's Memento for a silly amount of health, or Burden of the Rebel. Scrolling is hard. Burden of the Rebel for even better skill looping, or you could just go with Burden of the Destroyer for more damage. Really, there's a ton of options there. So for the Relic Fragment, I've got shield effectiveness and health for more bulk with Shielded Strike, and also damage reduction to get closer to the DR cap. With the current armor I'm wearing, I won't quite hit the DR cap. You can hit the DR cap with this setup if you go full Mark 1 Lido, like I am in the fight demonstrations, but overall I think it's better to stay at this level and still be able to roll if you need it, because if I just cast real quick, you can see we're at 77%. And then you could even, in the last flexible ring slot, you could just throw in something like Lithic Signet to get to 80% DR if you really care about the DR cap. That's pretty much it though. As you can see from the fights, the bosses die pretty stupidly fast when you consider that I'm barely playing the game at all. And mobbing is a joke when you have a portable 22-meter death zone just following you around. Heatwave is pretty blatantly bugged and will get fixed eventually, and Ring of Spears probably shouldn't be proccing Shielded Strike, but for now you can do some pretty ridiculous stuff with them, so enjoy.